Resonation, the feeling of oneness with a particular concept, like the serenity provided by the simple hum of a song's bass line, or the image of a flowery meadow devoid of predators to the psyche. Resonance is the concept of this feeling, a oneness granted from a liminal state beyond our bounded experiences of nostalgia, love, and attraction. We inhabit this area all throughout our daily lives, burdened often by a feeling that we are alone in resonating with a particular thing, like the sensations presented as ASMR, autonomous sensory meridian response. That kind of tingling or electric light senses throughout or from the back of the body, usually near the spine. Others feel that not only may they be alone, but that this feeling is unnatural or strange in and of itself, something unique or perhaps undesirable. To say such a thing would be to deny the same feeling one finds from the words of an impassioned and motivating speaker, from the beat and tune of a song, or the beauty of a particularly striking image. This feeling, resonance, is something core to our human experience. It's not just limited to one person, or even a lineage, but exists throughout the whole human population to the point of ubiquity. Those devoid of resonance simply deny or cannot find the sense that has been described to them, or perhaps are merely in a physically negative state that has constantly overwritten their more advanced consciousness in service of Sigmund Freud's id, or their need to participate in the base cycles of nutrition and reproduction. This primality is entirely offset by the experience of safety and the lack of known threats, and it is within these periods that we experience this blissful feeling. Individuals, however, are submissive in their absorption of the described emotion when contrasted with the group resonation, or synchronized resonance. As put forth extensively by several works of occultism dealing with magic, specifically the kinds that can be made manifest within or via other people, this concept of synchronized resonation is essential. These works typically begin their descriptions of consciousness as being powerful sources of energy, themselves fueled by an infinite cosmic force of energy beyond all life and all mortality, which projects their individual stemming whims onto reality in a force described as will. The effectiveness of combining these individual willpowers via the process of setting an intention becomes the first step of synchronized resonation, with the end goal being that these several energy sources, if directed towards a singular whim, will manifest a reality of that whim onto a greater degree than would be observed with singular practitioner. Multiple people will set an identical intention and so move on to the second step. Meditation, or the entrance into the subconscious by the active force of the human mind, is the next logical and desired phase of the process. When the individuals gather, usually in a singular place nearby each other, so that the physical reality of their proximity reinforces the desired metaphysical reality of the same, call back to intention, they begin to concentrate intensely. As the individual minds reach a state of resonation with the idea they demand to conjure, they begin to intersect with each other, the supernatural forces, or perhaps laws, of the universe recognizing the identicality of the whims, so naturally they could be said to combine. In a meta-sense, an arithmetic truth of this process could be explained in saying that the individual whims, by nature of being connected inextricably to the ultimate divine force of supreme energy that feeds them, only recognize a single desire when such a thing is first resonated upon, or is otherwise agreed to be manifested between them. Failure, however, to recognize a singular purpose, or an item to manifest, is a possibility, attested by many accounts of historical magicians and their failure when observed by more powerful ones. When a member or multiple members of such a group do not indeed have an identical intention as the others, a dissonance occurs, or when one cognitive force overpowers the others in intention. Intuitively, dissonance is effectively the inverse of resonation, at least in practical respect. As to the actual metaphysical makeup of the process, one could leave room for debate, and I myself have yet to fully consider the elemental nature of the idea. However, what can definitively be said is that dissonance is a breaking sensation, both enacted upon an existent resonation or resonant process, and one that is capable of halting or making incapable an individual to resonate whatsoever. Hexes, curses, bindings, and other such malicious magical spells are indeed mere reflections of this concept of dissonance, a kind of whim with the set intention of counteracting the possibility of resonance, or an intention of counteracting intention itself. Perhaps a physical manifestation of this could be explained in the scratching of a plate with a fork. I'm sure we've all felt that. A kind of total interruption of all senses, just entirely in that it is a kind of total interruption of all senses, something that inexplicably overrides the consciousness and its ability to cast its whim. Dissonation could be said to be an equal process to resonation, the end goal being the opposite, but having an equally powerful effect. The only capability for this to be true, however, lies in the possibility of an intention of dissonance being made. Given that the supreme source of energy in the universe is indeed performing a positive or granting action by providing energy to individual beings, it could not be performing dissonance. Could it be condoning of it, though? Perhaps, but in analysis we see that no energy that is within the universe is capable of being removed from it. And so, even if resonance was completely halted by some experimental or hypothetical means, the goal of dissonance must be reasoned to either not be a negative one, instead merely halting the process of the spread of energy, or is indeed impossible to host on a wholly universal scale, and thus fits into the prescription of negative force necessitated by the presence of a positive one. Further discussion on the matter, I believe, delves strongly into the concept that there are neither truths nor falsehoods, positives nor negatives, or at least something can exist outside of these two things that is still equal in power and capability. Following the success of a process of manifestation carried out by multiple identically intentioned consciousnesses, a result will occur. The intention being manifested and placed upon reality, like a pebble on a wall of stones, it will suddenly appear only once the builder has made up his mind to erect the wall higher. To some, this occurrence is phenomenal in and of itself, and is usually targeted as a miracle. However, most cases of synchronization are regulatorily passive, and may consist of only slightly changed material, or merely of a conveyance of material or conception within the social or physical environs the conjurer interfaces with. Examples include scenarios much like those brought about with the advent of advanced advertising techniques. The observer may find themselves thinking strongly or often of a particular concept happening to them, or even of the concept in and of itself, such as a blue basketball. For no discernibly important or excusable reason the very next day, a blue basketball was presented at the observer's place of work for use in a fun company activity. An excusable coincidence, possibly, but more stark occurrences usually consist of complex ideas or forms. The color red, for example, is indeed found in no short supply throughout daily life, but for red to suddenly appear on many, many objects all at once within a short time frame after having thought exclusively about said color, that could only imply a correlation, at least. Perhaps, by using a backward process of examination, one could interpret that the frequency of red coloration was something like a destination that the observer had already set their course for before any interactions with such had taken place, and the extensive thoughts on the subject are merely a subconscious psychological influence that intended, or at least acted in a way to prepare the observer for such interactions. After all, red is found in no short supply in the physical world. If so, why would the subconscious routinely forget its own preparation for the stimuli? And why would this specific scenario, of red appearing in so many places at once, lead the subject to be surprised and conjure such ideas as the elaborately non-arithmetic concept of manifestation? Even if there is no element of said preparation on part of the subconscious, how can any such reverse temporally operating excuse stand up to the fact that the subconscious must have somehow received the information that it was already on a precalculated path? might I add, the accuracy of which is sometimes too great to possibly excuse as an event of chance. Canceling out further possibilities, advanced advertising techniques can obviously be mitigated by the simple lack of participation in their services. Individuals without any internet or economic connections whatsoever still have reported the same kinds of experiences, and should there arise the contention that the phenomena be caused by a human factor included with associations between people, there are revelations of isolated, entirely independent people having still experienced the same things. I myself recall one story I once heard where a boy was lost in the woods, only to suddenly find an abandoned backpack after realizing he had found no food whatsoever. Now, this specific scenario might be, of course, very excusable, but later on, investigation proved that there had been no hikers in the area for a very long time, and that the backpack was mysteriously manifested into reality. These such incidents are referred to as synchronicities, due to the feeling, usually thought of immediately after the transpiration, that one's mind has somehow synchronized in the world around them in a more profound way than was thought possible. Further etymology is gathered from the occurrences involving a concept transferring from an original conjurer to another person or observer, who then brings up, adopts, or somehow interacts with the idea. Incidents involving this phenomenon also vary considerably in their effects. Some involve the convolutions of multiple different consciousnesses, while others are relegated to one. The question of the divinity of this phenomenon is constantly begged. Firstly, synchronicities are not of a characteristically helpful nature. Many individuals, women especially, mothers of older age especially, are known to be able, or have been able, to seemingly predict disasters before they happen. This is usually chalked up to the experience of the individual and a deep emotional connection to the person, typically their child, they are referring to. But seeing as this emotional link is always a dependent factor of their predictive capabilities and remains completely unexplained to any science, there is no logicality in excluding the process of resonance and synchronicity in explaining it. These disasters are not always prevented once predicted. Furthermore, a more textbook example of negative synchronicity is found in the classical advice and practical experimentation. As psychology itself has understood for a long time, the thinking of negative thoughts such as, "I'm going to trip when I walk up on stage, aren't I?" will effectively manifest them into reality. The process behind such manifestation is indeed entirely physical, as the connections between the brain and muscle system are well known. But as Hermetic law states, as above, so below. The physical world should and will reflect the process of the supernatural world. Regardless, the process of synchronicity should be seen as divinely fueled and granted, as all magical elements are. The inquiry into the absolute presence of the ability, or rather any curious thoughts as to the underlying and bare process itself, should be intelligently viewed as something potentially begotten by, or as that which begets human consciousness in the first place.